Good morning. We are at Learn Free. This is the second day of Learn Free 2023. And Sarah Travers is here with us this morning. She has quite an impressive background in teaching, but is now a mum herself and has developed a method which can help you if you want to help your children, support your children in learning to read in the kitchen. And she's going to share about that now. So I'm going to hand over to her. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today, everyone who's joining us live and anyone who's listening to the replay. So as Juliet said, yeah, I am a mum. I have a almost 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we have been kind of dabbling a little bit in learning to read, but we've been doing it in the kitchen, so which I know is quite a unique little thing to do. So I thought I'd come and share with everyone what we are doing. And just a bit about us. We're actually in a bit of a kind of a unique kind of situation. So we actually live between the UK and Germany. So my daughter actually does attend kindergarten here in Germany because they don't start school till 6 here. So she doesn't actually need, they don't do any formal reading instruction at all at the kindergarten, sorry. But one of the reasons she goes is so that she can learn German, and she's now fluent in German after 6 months of being there. So it's a bit of we're in this kind of like unique thing we do when we're in the UK. We do kind of a bit of homeschooling, a bit of home educating to kind of, because I know everyone kind of keeps their eye just a little bit on what's going on in schools, just because everyone wants to know. You never know what's going to happen, that you might need to kind of tap into that. But I will get started with our presentation today. I've lost there we go. It's moved where it was. So we're going to be talking today a little bit about learning to read, but in the kitchen. So we'll talk about some of the ways of setting up your child for success using recipes to make learning to read fun, purposeful, and delicious. So we quite often talk about making learning to read fun, but one of my kind of key goals is to make it purposeful, so that as we talked about just before, it's making it that you're not necessarily teaching them this purposeful way of learning to read and using their skills for life. So at the moment, think about, what does cooking feel like you? Because there's going to be two parts to this. There's going to be the learning to read kind of side of things and the cooking side of things. So have a think about you. What do you think? You know that cooking is beneficial for your child, but cooking with young children is stressful, so you avoid it. Are you kind of on that scale of things? Are you in the middle? You get your child in the kitchen, but you find it difficult to let them be independent, particularly with young children, and that can be a challenge. Or are you on number 3? Are you thinking about, you love getting your child in the kitchen, but you want to find a way to take that learning further, so that you know the kitchen is a great place and they're really enjoying it, but are there ways that you can be taking that further? So have a little think about that. Where are you on that scale of cooking and getting your kids in the kitchen? So let's have a little think about the second side of things now, and think about, what does reading feel for you, particularly if you're the very early stages, whether you're thinking about, you're preparing for how you're going to be helping your child learn to read, or if you're already started learning to read. Think about where you are. Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the information there is about learning to read? Because if you type it into Google, there is so much information about how you can help your child learn to read. So many different programs, so many different ways of doing it, right from your child should be learning to read at 3 years old, right up to, if you just let them get on with it, they'll learn to pick it up themselves, and everything in between. There is a lot of information out there. Are you at the second one? Are you thinking you can't remember how you learned to read, but the way that people seem to be telling you to do it, it seems completely different to how you learn to read? And I know for a lot of us, I can't really fully remember exactly how I learned to read. And now you're kind of in this position of, well, how do I help my own child learn to read? Or, and I know this is a big one for everyone, it's a huge test of patience helping your child learn to read, because you get them to sound things out, which is a way we are quite often teaching our children how to read, but they say it completely differently. So they might do k, at, and then say dog. Yet it seems so obvious to you what the word is, but it is a massive test of our patience, particularly when there's lots of other things going on at the same time, of how your child where they are at their reading. So have a think about, where are you on that reading? Are you 1, 2, or 3? Or in fact, you could be all 3 of them at the same time, particularly if you're at that very early stage when you're learning how your child and how you can be helping your child learning to read. So just a little bit about me. My name is Sarah, and as I said, I'm a proud mother to a 4-year-old and 1-year-old, and it's actually their birthdays in 2 weeks' time, and I can't believe that they're actually going to be 5 and 2. I don't know where that time's gone. I was a teacher for 5 years, and 3 of them were in a reception classroom, and I have also been a reading tutor through the pandemic. So I helped a lot of families, both home educating and children who were in school, with learning to read, and have did a lot of reports actually for local authorities for children who were home educated, and parents found that really helpful. I also have a podcast, the Your Learning Village podcast, where I give lots of information about learning to read and general learning at home and things that you can be helping to your child. And I've created this method called the Read to Cook method, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about today. So as we said, we're talking about learning to read in the kitchen and setting up your child for success for that. So I'll just go through what I'm going to be talking about. So there's, as I said, there's 2 sides of this. There's the cooking side of things, and there's also the reading side of things. And we're just going to go through those things. And this is kind of our agenda for today, what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about why a kitchen is a haven for learning, how you can set up your kitchen for success, and a role you have as the adult. And then I've got a little secret about the learning to read process, which I have learned through helping lots of different children through that learning to read process. And then how you can support your child who cannot read yet to read recipes and be independent in the kitchen, and have a little video of actually my own daughter doing this and using the method that we're doing, and a few other little resources for you at the end there. And if you have any questions, you can always pop them in the chat, or you can also save them to the end. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that. So let's get started then. The kitchen is a haven for learning. I don't know how many times I've seen it where people say, one of the things you can do is get your child in the kitchen, get them cooking. There's so many things that they can be learning. And I know we all get quite excited by this, but then sometimes the thought of it might start to put us off. If you've ever done any cooking with young children, you know it can get a bit hectic. So I will tell you a few little things to help you with that in a moment. But let's just think about some of the things the children can be learning in the kitchen. So sensorial learning is one of the main ways that children learn to read when they're in their first period of development. So the 0 to 6-year-olds, and that's through the Montessori kind of ideas. And sensorial learning, I love the idea that they have in Montessori with sensorial learning, because it is getting all the senses engaged, because that is how young children learn, and how from babies, right when they're mouthing things. And then we always talk about sensory play and sensory learning for are like preschool kind of age children, so 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. It does kind of then, unfortunately, tends to drop off a little bit. But cooking is one of those where we can expand that sensorial learning beyond that first period of development, beyond 6 years old, and right through to, I mean, even as adults, we are learning in the kitchen all the time as well. And you've got all the different senses going on. So for instance, if you're watching a pot of pasta being cooked, you can talk about the touch. Don't touch it, that's hot. You can talk about the smell when the pasta starts to cook, and can describe that. You can hear the bubbles. You can see the bubbles going on. I got all my senses there. And at the end, of course, one of the very few places where you can do all 5 senses is in the kitchen, because you can actually taste it as well. So you've got all 5 senses in that one experience by cooking. So that's why it's such a haven for learning. And of course, we have our fine and gross motor skills. There's so many things you can be doing with cooking. When you've got the cutting, you've got the mixing. Crossing the midline is such an important skill for brain development and developing our reading and writing skills. And if you've ever got a child to try and mix a bowl of something, it's really hard work for them. You do quite often need to help them, but you getting that fine motor and that gross motor skills in helps prepare them for reading and writing and all of our other skills that they need. And it's all there in the kitchen. Taking that development of using knife skills, so teaching them how to hold something still and then slowly cutting or quickly cutting, gradually building it up. you can get all those little skills in. We've got so often we're trying to get fine motor and gross motor skills activities in for our child, yet in the kitchen it's already there, and they're also using life skills at the same time when they're building that. Which moves me on to the next one, which is life skills and independence. We all want our children to be independent, and if we can get them cooking from very, very small and very, very young, they're going to build up these skills so that they can use them and slowly become independent. We started cooking in fact, even this morning, my 1-year-old, almost 2-year-old, wanted to start cutting things. And we've been doing that for so long with my older daughter. She now just goes into the kitchen and asks, can I help you do this? And starts getting things out and starts doing it herself. So building that independence in the kitchen and then being able to get those life skills in is really important. And of course, we have our maths, we have our science, and I'm going to talk to Lou today a lot about our reading. I'm always told, and I'm sure you've been told as well, there's so much maths in the kitchen. There's halves, there's quarters, there's doing all, once they get a bit older, the multiplication to work things out, to make things halves, make things double things, or the weighing and all the other skills that you have in there for maths and science as well, watching all the things combine to make something new. And of course, we have our reading. Now, for a beginner reader, it can be more of a challenge, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So, using cooking makes learning purposeful, yet we seem to be making all these elaborate tasks to help meet this. So, getting your child in the kitchen and getting them cooking can really help them with all these skills and helping their development as well. So what you might be thinking is, how can I set the kitchen up so I can help make it successful for my child? Now, particularly if they are small, there are some things that you can be doing to help your child with this. So learning to cook is an important skill, but let's face it, it is messy. And I know this is one of the things, it puts me off a little bit, and it puts a lot of people off, because as much as you try to hold back and let them get on with it, there is undoubtedly going to be mess everywhere. And I am still dealing with this now, that we are still trying to work out how we can actually get her to get flour into a cup and it not kind of end up a bit everywhere. But it is slowly, the more that you're exposing a child to letting them have a go in the kitchen, we will slowly begin to get over the mess. But I know as home educators, there's going to be mess anyway, because learning is messy. It doesn't matter where you're doing it, whether you're doing it in the kitchen, at the kitchen table, outside, in the living room, there is mess everywhere. I don't know how many times I've been looking, we keep losing pen lids for things, and they are everywhere. And we've got our entire dining room table is covered in beads, pens, everything. And then I'm just like, well, actually, might as well just get them in the kitchen and keep going messy anyway. So I want to know, and I don't know if the chat is, can I see the chat on this one?
You should be able to, if you look on your little bar.
Anyone who is here, I want to know, what is holding you back from cooking with your kids? And there are a few people here, so if there is something holding you back, just type it in the chat, let me know. I know for me, one of the things that does some hold me back is the mess. And also it is a bit of the time as well, that it can be setting things up, can take quite a bit of time to get set up. But once we've kind of got into this involvement, where we have got in the kind of a rhythm of doing things, now we know where we're at with it, and it doesn't take as long to set up. So if you do have anything that's holding you back from cooking with your children, just let me know. I'll keep an eye on the chat now, and if you do have an idea, you can pop that in there. And if you are watching the replay, just have a think, what is holding you back from cooking with your children? So some of the things to think about with cooking with your kids as well is, think about, I was going to go to the next slide, process over end product. So with learning to cook and cooking in the kitchen, we quite often get this thing, well, we need to make this cake and it needs to make it look really good and it needs to be edible. But sometimes the learning comes from not that end product, but the process. So taking the time with your child to have those kind of moments where they have that epiphany where they're like, oh, I do know what a half is. Oh, I do know how to mix something. Oh, I have been able to cut that. So really it's try as much as you can to focus on the process and what they are learning over that end product. And I know I quite often have to keep reminding myself, it's okay if the cake is a complete disaster. My child has learned so much by doing by focusing on the process and actually getting involved and being able to do it herself. And I know it's really hard to think about when you think, oh, but we want that end thing. So sometimes even stepping back and making sure that, yes, you want your child to be making it, but don't put that much pressure on that. We do need to make a cake for grandma, but you might need to kind of have a backup one just in case. But make sure that they are getting involved and that they've got that process. So, I just had a comment here. Yeah, great. It's important to know that children learn it's okay with failure. It's okay that the cake didn't turn out how it was supposed to. And yeah, we don't like mess. That's one thing that I do. And just a comment here from Christine. It says, although I love working with clay and plaster of Paris when I was younger. And yeah, it's just thinking about that end product. Kids love it. I know when I'm cooking with my daughter, she always asks, can I put my hands in it? As soon as we get the flour out, she wants to put her hands in and start moving. And I was, no, not yet. And I've had to really kind of go, yes, it's okay to touch the flour. It's okay. And you really have to almost train yourself to be like, it's okay if they touch it. It's okay if they touch it. And yeah, the mess, we're still working on that. So taking small steps with your child. So when they're very small, or even if they are a bit older, yet they haven't had a lot of time in the kitchen, just taking small steps to let them have a go at doing things and show them how to do it. We quite often call this modeling, where we're showing them how to do something. So if you're cutting with them using a knife, show them how to do it and then try to step back and let them have a go. So for instance, we've been for a long time learning how to cut strawberries because they're quite a kind of squishy fruit. They're quite easy to cut. So we've been using a knife, and I've shown my daughter so many times how to do it. And now, to start with, she'd have a slice of a strawberry here. It'd be a bit mushy, we'd lose a bit of it. But now, because we've been doing it over and over again, and I've been stepping back, almost sitting on my hands, not to get involved, and letting her do it, she now can cut strawberries completely on her own. But it's small steps. It's not going to be straight away that they're going to be able to do it. You've got to slowly build up that confidence with them. So the next few things I'm going to show you some of the ways we've set up our kitchen to help her get involved with cooking and make it a little bit easier and build up that independence. So one of the important things that I always talk about is that the children need to be able to access the kitchen and where it is. So you might have seen, I know quite online, people have about like mini kitchens and children get involved with those. But one of the ways to do it is just to make sure that they can access this, the side where you are working. So having a set of steps or even a step stool where they can get up to the kitchen, or sometimes we will go and do it on the dining table and we will cook on there. But particularly these steps, I really like them because particularly for young children, you can step up and also she can lean over. So I was always terrified, but there's one step stool that she was going to lean over and kind of topple over. But it's nice to have it so that they can do that. There are like fancy learning towers that you can get, but I like these ones because you can move them around the kitchen. So she then moves them herself to go and help do washing up, or if she needs to get something on the other side of the kitchen. The steps are really helpful for moving around, and also if you've got tiny toddlers, they also like to climb up them as well. I will put a side note with this. These have been taken into our living room many times and used as part of an obstacle course, but they are predominantly there for being used in the kitchen, and they're just part of our kitchen now, and making sure that they can get access is really helpful to help with learning in the kitchen. Another thing to think about is, has your child got access to tools that they can use? Now, there are kind of all different stages you can use. These here we have a set of plastic knives, which have been really helpful for us to help with learning to cut things. They work really well with bananas, as I said, with strawberries, not so well with some of the harder things, but they are a good kind of stepping stool to help your child get into the kitchen, help them with cutting things. So particularly for toddlers, very young children, they are great for that. And quite quickly, they will develop onto being able to use the sharper knives. I know for me, as a parent, I really found these useful because I know that it's helping her to develop her cutting skills, but I'm not worried about her losing her fingers, because I know that's something that did really put me off too, that this is a really helpful tool to have for her. Things like peelers as well are really helpful, and to get them used to peeling things. But yeah, these knives are really helpful. Another thing to think about if you've got very young children and cooking is using cups rather than grams. Now, a lot of recipes will have grams in them, and I was talking to someone the other day who makes recipes, and he said, but it's more accurate to use grams. Yes, it is more accurate to use grams, but using cups and recipes with cups for very young children is a lot easier, because if you've got a child who's trying to learn what the ingredients are, how to do things in the kitchen, and then you're having a go at reading as well, that's a lot for them to be dealing with. A cup, they can see that there's a visual kind of cue in there. They can see what they're filling out their words. But if you're adding in numbers as well, that's a lot for them to be dealing with. Also, another thing, they can read the word cups a lot easier than the word grams. So cup, that's 3 sounds for them to do, whereas grams is a bit longer, and there's just much more going on. So try to use cups as well, and you can have that whole conversation with them about it being a half cup, a full cup. You can start bringing that in there as well, or you can have a full set of cups if you have those. But we quite often talk about half full. It's just getting more language in there and empowering them to be able to use those skills. So there's a little tip for you there. So I hope you found those little tips helpful for helping get your child in the kitchen. Now I'm just going to move on to a little bit more about the kind of reading side of things. So getting your child reading, sometimes it comes across as it's quite simple, but it's not always as simple as some people make it seem. Now, I have worked with a lot of children at the very early stages of learning to read. I was calculating it the other day. I think I've done about 2,000 hours worth of one-to-one reading with children. So all this kind of comes back from that. And there was one little secret, which I'm going to share with you now, which really helped with getting children reading who were finding it quite tricky. Now, the little secret is give your child non-fiction text as an option. Maybe thinking, okay, yeah, we do have a little bit of non-fiction, but I want you to have a little bit more think about that, because have a think about your child's bookshelf now. One of the big trends is that children's bookshelves are actually filled with fiction text. Now, this is because stories are a very important part of learning to read. It's great to pick up a book and read with your child. And that's why we have a lot of stories, but non-fiction texts have quite a bit of power. So I want you to have a think now, what is on your child's bookshelf? Is it all stories, or have you got information books, or have you got a mix of both? Now, as home educators, information books and non-fiction books are really important for helping develop a broad curriculum and helping that your child get in lots of information and learn lots of different things. But have a think, what is on your bookshelf? Now, I know even for my child's bookshelf, it is mostly stories. Information books, particularly for younger children, are sometimes a bit trickier to find. But what I have found with my experience helping children learn to read, when children are given the chance to also read non-fiction, it then helps them increase how quickly they're able to pick up reading. And a lot of children actually enjoy non-fiction texts more than fiction texts. So there is, when I've done kind of comparisons and I've got children to read a fiction text and a non-fiction text, there's quite often a gap. And when you pull up the gap with the non-fiction, it does help children to make more progress with reading. So why non-fiction? And the reason why I'm talking a lot about non-fiction, I'm going to slowly lead into this, is talking about the recipes and in the kitchen. So non-fiction texts are really important because it taps into children's interests. And when you are following your child and empowering them to make decisions for what they want to be able to learn, that's where non-fiction texts can really tap in. And it activates background knowledge. So if they know about a particular subject, they're then more likely to want to read about that subject and get involved in that. So it's activating that background knowledge which is already in their mind. It's also easier to read non-fiction text in a little bit smaller chunks. With a story, you kind of need to read the whole thing to get the whole gist of what's going on. So a lot of reading instruction, although we want to make it as kind of natural as possible, we kind of got stuck in level books and focusing on fiction reading. So have a think about, well, if you have been teaching your child to read at the moment, are you focusing mostly on stories, or are you focusing on non-fiction, or are you trying to get a bit of a blend of both to help that kind of balance with your child? And have you tried to have a look for non-fiction texts? I know they sometimes can be a bit more of a challenge to find. So have a think about that now. So what is your child's access to different story types like? Different text types like? So number one, is it all stories? You haven't even thought about information text? Number two, do they have a mix of fiction and non-fiction, but find it hard to get non-fiction? And I know that it can be a bit of a challenge. And you think maybe number three, you might need to have a think about getting more a mix of both stories and non-fiction in front of them. So just have a little think about that and think about where your child is at and what their access to text are. So we quite often think about children's reading practice coming through like level books and being in books, but my goal is actually to get children using recipes, because this is a type of non-fiction text that they can use to be making it purposeful. So that's why I've developed this little method. But very early readers find it hard to access recipes. Although we've talked about using cups and helping them set up the kitchen for success, it's really hard for them to read recipes. There's a lot of text that goes into that. And if they are at the very early stages, they do need a lot of support. So this is why I have developed this read to cook way of doing things. So another reason why I have developed it is because the parent-child relationship is special. I want to get people into the kitchen and sharing reading in a purposeful way. If you're trying to help your child with reading, you'll know that it can be a bit of a, because we can put so much pressure sometimes onto reading, because it's one of the skills that you'll use for life. I highly doubt today that you have managed to go without reading something. Reading is part of our lives as adults, as our children's lives as they grow up. I can't avoid it. But we sometimes putting so much pressure onto wanting our child to read that we are forgetting about that parent-child relationship and helping them to develop and helping keep preserving that relationship. So that's why I like to use cooking, because it takes that pressure off the reading and it just makes it that nice bonding moment for us, and also just those other skills that we're learning as well. So that's why using recipes to help your child with reading is helping to preserve that special relations that we have with your child. And I know that many of my memories, and I know for a lot of people as well, my memories of my childhood is being in the kitchen, cooking with different family members, which is why I want to make sure that this is part of this method. So what I will show you now, this is actually one of the read to cook cards that I create. So what it has, this is my pancake recipe, and it uses a mix of visual recipe and simple sounds that children can be learning. And so this one here, it's very, very simple. They're able to get out the bowl themselves, have a go at reading a few words. You can even be using sounds with them, telling them what those sounds are, to read just one or two words. And quite quickly, they pick up the word cup, the word spoon. They get the hang of that. It's just very tiny little bits where they can be building that up. And also with recipes, they begin to follow a structure. So it helps them to learn to read because it takes off away that cognitive load. They know that we follow number one, then we go to number two, then we go to number three. And I'll go with my daughter now. I'll say, well, we've done number two now. What number are we up to next? And then she'll say, oh, we're on number three. and then she'll find number 3, and then she starts to read along. So it's having that structure to help them with the recipe so that they can be getting on reading. And this is another one here. This is our broccoli cups recipe, and again it's using very simple sounds which I've taken out that children can be using, and they can learn to follow it themselves. Now, what I have next is actually in action with my daughter having a go at using the Read to Cook card. As I said, we've been using it a little while. And just to show you how you can be using this with your own children. Now, I don't know if this bit's going to play. And, just freeze it. So, well, I will just also give a quick little thing before I play it. My other daughter at the same time was decided that she was going to be a toddler and start crying halfway through it. So you will see me kind of leave the room and come back in again. But just to show you that you can be doing this with all sorts of things kind of going on in the background. Also what she does do it is she shows you that she's using her reading, but then she will go and start looking at the different ingredients herself. So yeah, it will be, I don't know if actually it might be easier. I'll just change over, because I have it on another.
Yeah, I've just said in the comments, sometimes videos can be a bit laggy on Zoom, but you know, it will play. It might be in stops and starts, but it will play.
If I pop it on this one, it might come a bit better. I'll just turn the sound right down as well, because she will start crying halfway through. So this is our setup here. I always have the card. I pop it on a little iPad just so we can zoom in and out so you can see it better. And I get all the ingredients set up for her, and then she goes along and has a go at reading herself, and she's now starts putting it all in herself. So I'll just show you what happens, and hopefully, do I need to share my sound or anything? I don't think I...
If you will need to share sound, then you'll need to go to your view options on the little bar, whatever it is on that little black bar, and share sound. Or when you do your screen share, it gives you a little box to tick to share sound.
Yeah, I think I should be on there. I'll just make sure it's not too loud for you, just because you can hear her reading as well, as it might help you there. Do you have the B on the B? This is actually an E sound. B, E, beat. Good girl. 1. Good girl. Of sugar. Sugar. Yeah, good girl. 1 cup of sugar. See what's the reference. Let's see what's the reference. Yes. What are you trying to do, darling? With the sugar? It's easy, darling, if you just do it as you want to do it by yourself. What? Half of spoon. So yeah, so she's been well trained there. So she kind of goes in, she double checks to see, and she's also reading the word the half there. There's so many things that she was able to do independently, even though I did have to keep leaving the room. But I know that quite often there are other younger siblings that want to get involved as well. And she also, because we've been doing it for so long, she also likes to go and check all the ingredients. I literally left my camera because I was recording for some other things, and I was amazed when I came back and saw that she was able to do that all by herself. It was very much a proud mummy moment. Oh, we worked through these, and she's been there, but she doesn't feel the stress of like having to sit down and read a book and work her way through it. It's been very much like this fun, purposeful. We were making banana bread, so we got to eat the banana bread at the end of it. But we are picking up the reading skills at the same time. And she's getting that reading practice in, but through the cooking as well. So yeah, I I hope that kind of shows you a little bit more how you can be reading in the kitchen with her. So I'll just change back over now to my. Can I switch? Is it gonna let me switch? Switch the share? Yeah. Okay. So I hope that you found that quite helpful. I do have, if you want to find out a little bit more and actually grab your own pancake recipe to have a go at learning to read with cooking with your child with recipes. I have a little guide and a little, what I call a starter kit. So it's got a pancake recipe in there and the questions that most families have asked about learning to read. So there's 5 questions that I have been asked over and over again, and there's little kind of tips in there that you can be helping your child with reading. If you want to grab that, you can head over to my website, which is www.yourlearningvillage.com. I also have a podcast I mentioned at the beginning, which is called Your Learning Village, and there's about 30 episodes on there with lots of different things about learning to read and early learning, and they're really quick tips that you can just kind of pop in your ear, because I know I always have one earbud in and was doing something else, that you can be learning to help with learn to read and helping your child with learning at home. And yeah, that's me for now. If you have any questions, I am here to answer them. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I can answer them or turn your cameras on, however you want to do it.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I think, this is what I like about this is just doing life. And I think home education, so much of it is doing life with your child. And actually, when you're raising a baby, generally the way we respond to our children is like we see what they need, we see what they're asking for, we see where they are developmentally, what they're kind of ready to do, and you facilitate and you support them. So that when they're learning to walk, you kind of facilitate and support them through that process, and as they're learning to talk. And a lot of people think that when you start home educating, you've somehow got to start teaching. And actually you don't. You're continuing that same journey you started out on, facilitating and supporting, seeing where they are at what they're ready for. You put things in place like a bit of scaffolding or whatever they need. And it's part of your everyday life. So it's not something you have to go and do specially. You're already cooking and baking. It's not like you have to go to a special class for it. It can happen right in the home. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Please feel free to unmute at this point and to communicate directly with Sarah.
Yeah. So now I've kind of felt that pressure of like, I think it is particularly is reading and the kind of math, the kind of like core, as we say, the core kind of subject. Sorry, I'm a teacher previously, and it's always going to come out like that. But we do feel the pressure of those like academic skills that we feel that we have to sit down, and we see a lot of it around that we have to sit down and do it. And I have really liked just being able to go, there's a recipe, let's do all this other learning and know that we're getting reading practice in as well. It makes the whole process,
killing like
said,
3 birds with 1 stone, never mind 2, And I think the thing is, like I often see on different news articles, or you see people saying, we think that schools should be teaching more children how to cook, or schools should be teaching children how to do their laundry, schools should be teaching children how to grow plants. And my reaction to that is actually no, parents should be doing that. That is, life, school, if people are using school, the role of school is really actually to kind of it's meant to be more academic. And I don't believe that schools should be worrying about parenting children, because they're not meant to. The children have parents. And yes, I know that there's some parents who would rather spend more time on their phone than doing things with their children. But it would be lovely if we could kind of infect parents with that desire to actually raise a whole child that has all these abilities. Another interesting thing is when I went to a university open day with one of my children, I went to the parents' talk, and they were like, you might want to teach your child how to scramble an egg or warm up some beans.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
remember being asked that
you know,
when I first went to uni.
yeah, and
People
it's
were
so,
like, "How do you cook this? How do you cook
or
pasta?" I got asked. So I was like,
yeah,
"How do
or
you not
how
know
to
this?"
use the washing machine.
Oh
Now, to
yeah.
me, if you've got adult children in your home, you shouldn't be doing their laundry anymore. And it's life skills. And
Mhm.
as a parent, it actually is our responsibility, regardless of whether our children are in school or not. It's our responsibility to equip our children for life. But when you do it alongside them and you're modeling different things, and that's also relationship building, isn't it?
And it's also you as a and the nice thing about in a home educating environment is you're doing it kind of like one-on-one or one or two
Mm.
or trying to stop the toddler from touching everything at the same time. But it's actually you can get that more kind of meaningful. You can actually show them how to do it. Whereas in a classroom situation, I know when I was cooking with kids, there was so much other stuff going on, and they didn't all get to necessarily have that
Mm.
opportunity
Yeah.
to break the egg, to scramble it. Like now, I'm not allowed to break eggs in our house anymore. My 4-year-old has to do it because we've done it so many times that I can do it. And then she'll go and show Daddy. She's like, "Look, Daddy, I can do this," and he's like, "She can't." Like, watch, and she'll sit there and she'll scramble and she checks with the shell, and she's very good at doing it as well. But we've built up to that. Whereas I
Yeah.
think that there'll be like, as you said, like people going to university not knowing how to crack an egg or
Exactly.
scramble an egg.
Exactly. And I think, as I said, it's also about relationships. So through doing it, obviously it tests your relationship at times, because there are moments when you must surely think it would just be quicker and easier if I did it myself.
Yep.
So you are learning a lot of patience, and as you said, to like bite your tongue, that kind of thing. But it is also building a bond that she's going to remember.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And one of the things, I do a talk sometimes on how children learn and that kind of thing. And one of the things is the importance of relationship in learning, if for a child to retain. So Meg, I actually did see your Instagram post about making bread while you were in the session. So she's just made some comments there, if you about
Yeah,
switching to
so
cup
definitely.
measurements.
Yeah, yeah, cups is a really. I remember switching it because I did it when with my reception class. Started doing cups. A lot of American recipes actually come up in cups. I
Yeah,
have
I
noticed
convert
that.
to cups quite a lot, or I use
Yeah,
milliliters.
yeah.
Um,
But yeah, for 3 and 4-year-olds, you've got because also grams you tend to have like 180 grams. It's like, well, they've got to know what 100 is, they've got to know what 80 is, they've got to then know
yeah.
get the measurement, and they've probably tried to pour it in and put a finger in
And
and
that
taken a
can
bit out at
come
the same
later. The
time. Like,
grams
yeah,
can come
yeah,
later.
definitely,
But
yeah,
and
yeah,
if you get a decent set of measuring cups, with enough options.
yeah.
We have quite a nice little food scale, which
Hmm.
which I use quite a lot now. And I think as children are older, that would actually be they'd probably really enjoy that proper weighing out of
Yeah.
things. So we've got a digital one, so it gives very precise
Oh,
readings.
yeah,
But I do tend to convert. I like sort of what liquid measurements
yeah.
rather than
But
the
cups it for like
weight.
as you said for 3 4-year-olds cups is definitely better, and I'd say probably about when you're about 7 8 then change to
Mm,
grams because then they've got more of a kind of understanding that I do
mm.
actually have a little it is on the is it the exhibitors page.
Yes.
I have a link there. I do have a 3 recipes which have got which are using this ready to cook method, so as like a starter pack that you can grab there. Also they've got the pancake one on the free one I said, if you did want to kind of get some recipes there, and that's all in grams, all using the like visual recipe as I said, and if your child is 3 4, not necessarily going to know some sounds, but you can be starting to show them the k up, so they are picking up a few phonic sounds in there as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important point you make about your exhibitors page, by the way, is that's another good reason for people to go and check and see what exhibitors have put there, because there are these kinds of offers and helpful things. And it's just simply a click of the mouse onto, or a tap on your phone.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about how I prefer a desktop phone, but
I know if you've got a 3 and 4-year-old, I rarely get on a desktop. It's always on my phone.
yeah, and let me just so if you go onto I'll go and find the website now if I can,
I'm just
and
going to quickly plug my laptop in because it's just come up with the like your battery's going to die. So I'm just
okay.
to
So
bring
while
that up.
you're sorting your
Hang on one
battery, I'll
second.
just take your spotlight off you. So just to show, if you are on your phone, you've got this little page here and your menu at the top, and you've got conference. And if you click on conference, it says the conference and the people. And if you click on the people, it shows exhibitors. And then it'll get there eventually. And then you can scroll through all your all the exhibitors, and we've got a few new ones there. And let me find Sarah's one here. Your learning village is Sarah. And did I click it properly, tap it properly? So
yeah, someone said about using cups. Yeah, a lot American recipes tend to be in cups. I think there is like a bit difference supposedly between US cups and like UK cups, but at the end of the day, it's the process, isn't it? It's not the actual like exact measurements that you can do. I, for a long time, just used mugs as well rather than an actual cup, but I invested in a proper set of cups recently, and it has helped with getting like the measurements in there. Because using the words like full, empty, half full are all really important for young children, and just by using that cup you can have that whole conversation with them there. But yeah, US recipes tend to be more in cups. In the UK it tends to be more grams. They do also if you are using US recipes, they tend to use something I've learned over time. They'll say about all-purpose flour. That is plain flour in the UK. Just that it took me a while to work.
You know what? The thing is, Google is your friend.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, go on Google. You can go and do conversions on Google.
Yeah,
Just say, so you can say, 180 milliliters equals, and then you say cups, and it'll tell you.
Yeah.
It'll convert it for you. There's no reason whatsoever to be second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
You can go and
that's
look it
why
up.
I've done a lot of the recipes I've been creating, because I've been creating a whole bank of them. I have spent time to kind of do that conversion for you, because sometimes it can be a bit like, well, you need 180 grams. I think that's like 1 3/4 a cup, which can be a bit.
And then you get pounds and ounces as well, and and fluid ounces, and which I don't speak that language, but so that's just to show you. There's Sarah's exhibitors page, so you can go and check that out and make contact with her as well if you want to find out more. So Christine, are you happy with that answer?
That's lovely, thank you.
Yeah. I think, as they get older, obviously you can upgrade to because by then they would start learning about things like liters and milliliters and that kind of thing. So but you've opened the door. And it's actually, I think,
you've got the kind of cooking skills
at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just getting them in the kitchen and having a go, and not just adding all these extra things. Because even like the ingredients, like I said, when my daughter was like looking at the different ones, like when they're like 3, 4, they don't necessarily know the difference between flour and sugar. And it sounds silly, but why would they know? Like, as far as they're concerned, they see the cake fully made. They don't see the bits that go into it. That's also them learning things as well. Like, we don't want to overload them with too many things at once. Like, I think sometimes we get that pressure of like, we need to do the full recipe. It needs to be exactly like this cake. You need to follow all these ingredients, and you've got to use grams. You've got to use, and it's a lot going on. So just taking some of those things out, like, it can be helpful.
Well, you're also teaching them adaptability. And you're teaching them that whole thing about being okay with failure. So, that, and actually failures can be delicious too.
Oh yeah.
It's not like I think one of the things that we've noticed a lot is that often the school system, the way it's set up, children think there's only one right answer. And, oh, I got it wrong, so I'm no good. So that can actually have a sort of negative effect if they only think there's only one right way to do this.
Yeah.
And teaching them that there's other ways. And if you realized late in the it's that you're about to go in the oven, you didn't add the baking powder, what are you going to do? That kind of thing. It's actually all part of other life skills and critical thinking and problem solving. So there's really a lot that comes out of working like that in the kitchen. And I think you're onto a really good thing. And the more we embrace all of these bits of life as learning, and see opportunities for learning in everything we do, the better it's going to be for our children and how they integrate and assimilate
Mhm.
the information. And Christine says she's a late convert to Jamie Oliver's way of cooking, because he does it. If you don't have this, you can use that.
Oh yeah, and I found that because I don't know if you were here at the beginning for some of you, because we're expats, so we live in different places, and quite often I'll get a recipe and the ingredient's not here. So for instance, here in Germany they don't have self-raising flour, so we've learned how to make self-raising flour, and we're always you kind of go, oh, that'll do kind of, you learn to convert things.
Well, people knew how to do that back in the day.
Mhm.
If people did know how to, they knew what they could use instead of. And sometimes there's things you can use vinegar for if you don't have, and and Google is your friend. If you don't have
Oh,
an
yeah.
ingredient, go and find out what's a good substitute,
Yeah.
because there's always something you can do. So don't be shy, and don't think we all know the stuff out of the top of our heads. We all went and looked it up at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing.
you're
Is there anyone
welcome.
else wants to ask anything before we close this session? It's been absolutely great and lovely to see how your daughter is learning and giving us a little demonstration. And, I hope we'll be hearing more from you at Learn Free in the future. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you
And
for
thanks
having me.
everyone else who came along, and we're going to end that session now. The next one is at 11:30 and one of them is me. So I do need to go. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.